Something's off.
Mushka, what could that be? That's my question. If something is off, what is it?
You tell me, because I think something's off.
Yeah, well, this is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. And I can tell you, was a mystery for many, many, many years. And so maybe if you're joining us today, ideally, entrepreneurs out there, founders, business owners, and I like to say, Mushka, people exactly like the two of us, key individuals, either in their businesses or are in charge of important things, um, often feel like, right, there could be a little something off. I mean, you and I have been in and out of this, right, where we're doing a bunch of things, we're hustling and we're just moving through, but maybe it doesn't feel like it's clicking.
We have been there.
Yeah. One of the things I like to ask, and it's a simple statement, and Mushka, you and I, and we know this has happened. This has happened multiple times over the last, years we've been working with different companies and businesses. And I would like to state this, and you talk about finding hidden money in businesses. And so the statement I thought that I would use that brings this out is just, what if the next 25K to $100,000 a month? If you think about this, that's quite a bit of money. Not for some businesses, that's not that much. For some, it can be quite changing. What if it was hidden inside of what you were already doing?
My point is, even if it's 25K or 30K or 100K, but it's free money. It could be the smallest amount out there, but it's still free. It's already hidden in whatever you're doing. Who does not like free money?
By the way, I could not have stated that better. Like free money, and by the way, so true, right? So this statement is 100% legit. What if the next 25 to 100K monthly was hidden inside of the things that you're already doing? Now, let me explain this a little bit more, because we know this is true. We've had this many different times with several different businesses. But what I would like to say is, what if the real reason your business isn't growing? It's not because it's something that you see, it's something that you don't see. Okay. And what I would like to say is, if you think about this, it's not often just the strategy. It's not because maybe you don't have great people, or you might say that there's not the talent. And often what we found when we work with different clients is that they do have amazing services. They've got great products. People, in fact, tell them about this. In fact, people would state, man, this is wonderful or amazing what you do. But they ask themselves, like, why don't I have stacks of people lined up then if I continue to hear it so good? It's about what I'm going to refer to kind of as this invisible misalignment. And we're going to talk and we're going to break that down. So we're going to talk about, if something doesn't feel quite right, it doesn't click the way we think. Mushka, you mentioned free money. Often the reason that money doesn't flow, and the reason we don't end up with people stacked up at our doors, is because there's some misalignment in what we're doing. And let's go ahead and let's kind of get into this and talk about what that is for everybody that's going to be watching this today and down the road.
What are we going to call it, Nathan?
Great question. We're going to come back to this and call it, right now, we're going to refer to this process as Flow 360. So if you think about this, one is, you talked about finding hidden gold. What if we just turned on the tap? What if we just allowed the revenue to flow more than it normally would based on the things you're doing by simply realigning things? Think about this. If you had a kink in the hose, okay, the straighter that hose and the more aligned it gets, doesn't that water flow faster?
Yeah.
So
I
one of the things, go ahead.
I was thinking about, like, so this is a bad example, but still, my mom, my mom has this problem in her vertebrae. So she, does not walk properly. But then she goes to this chiropractor, and now it's everything is aligned, and then she can walk properly. And whenever you say misaligned, that's what comes to my mind.
You're right on. I would say, um, I don't know if there's actually a better thing. If you think about this, some people can think that they have woken up with a sore back, and all day, you're taking pain medicine to try to get better. And some people might have had different things in their lives that have caused them to need to go to a chiropractor, or people would often seek the chiropractor themselves out. And the whole reason they do that, right, is alignment. Because when it's aligned, you can get rid of the pain. You also stand straighter. You can do a lot more things with a lot less effort. If you think about that, when you're in pain, I know several people that have been in that position where they've had part of a pinched nerve, or again, the muscles weren't, they were too tight or too tense because their back wasn't aligned. So I really love that example. Very true. Your business, by the way, is very similar to this. And coming back, go ahead.
Okay, so I have known you for a long time, Nathan, and I know you just don't throw out frameworks and models like that. If you're talking about Flow 360, there's something more, there's something deeper that connects Flow 360 to the businesses, right? Let's talk about what is it that's not just strategy or lack of strategy. There's something else and something invisible. And I'd want you to, start from the point where you actually got that clarity and, there was this bulb that just lit in your head and you went like, okay, this is it. So let's talk about that.
Okay. Let's talk about that a little bit. I've got this kind of on screen, so hopefully that can help me move through this with all my ideas, because as you know, I am full of way too many of those. And as we bottle them up and then we put these into play, it's where we find that some of that magic happens. And it's been great to have you around to help me extract some of those things. So again, if we look at this with what we're talking about, often it's not the strategy, it's not the talent, it's often not necessarily how your product is necessarily presented or your services, how you're offering those to customers. I like to say it's like not chaos. Things often don't feel like you aren't on a trail or you're going the right way. It's not necessarily failure. It's not that you're doing everything right on paper. So if you think about this, because often if you've gone out there, we've been told to make sure we're communicating, we're networking, we're marketing. We might have done some paid ads. We might be doing things on our websites to give people information, referred to as like the funnels or a lot of those things. And a lot of people are doing this and they're doing a lot of it. And they're probably doing so much of it that as they step back, there's like things don't feel like they're coming together right, right? So this is this misalignment. So it's the lens, it's part of the combination of the messaging, and the systems are not coming together in the way that you want them to come together. And this is one of the patterns that we see. And so this is what I've noticed over and over. And I have been here and I still find myself in this place often because of something new that we find or something new that is needed for the business. It's needed for our clients and their businesses. And so we have to kind of continuously make sure that we're realigning some things. So it's the right actions. Okay. So this is part of the patterns that we see is the right actions, offers, content, sales calls. We tend to feel like we've got the right pieces. However, the results aren't lining up. Something still is missing despite the effort. And a lot of people feel, and if you think about this, Mushka, you might be able to share this with yourself or with other businesses that you've seen as well, is they're working hard. They're probably working too hard. They're working in the weekends. And we're not about stating, hey, we're going to give you all this time back. Although when you find alignment, you do get time back. When you find alignment, you get these other things that come back in regards to all the efforts you're putting forward, right? So it's kind of like there's this diminishing return where we're trying to push through this, but the harder you push, right, the slower everything feels like it is. Some people talk about it's like pushing the boulder up the hill. Some people feels like they're kind of feeling like they're stuck in the mud. Businesses might use terms, and I'd be curious to know, Mushka, what you call this. They kind of feel like they're hitting the ceiling and they try different things, but they seem like they can't kind of get past that. You have any thoughts on that?
Uh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. This reminds me of this time, like many, many months ago, you told me something. You said you cannot scale confusion. You can only multiply confusion. That's what I remember. You said that you can't scale confusion. You can only multiply confusion. And this reminds me of all these times when we've met people and they've been misaligned and they've not like been in a place where they're doing everything, they're putting in extra hours and things. And yes, they see results, but the results are not at a level where they'd want to see results, right? So if that's any one of you out there, then this next part is actually for you.
I love that. I think about it, maybe if I were to try to refer to this as a motor that's running on, let's say, 4 out of 8 cylinders, 6 out of 8 cylinders, 2 out of 8 cylinders, just because you put the throttle down and you try to put more fuel does not mean that those other cylinders fire up. If that makes sense, you simply actually waste gas. And so to your point, if you think that you're going to accelerate and you're trying to move forward, but there's misalignment, you simply are doing more of what's broken or more of what's keeping you slowing down. So it actually requires more effort as you move through it. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to break this down into 3 key areas that I have found that really, when they come together, completely transform. When we started off this by talking about the free money in your business, when we do these, it aligns things so that we're able to see that and we're able to get that out of the business with the efforts that we're already putting in, or with the initiatives, or with the strategies. So this isn't something that we stack on top. This is not something that if you're out there, you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time. The challenge are the things that already exist. You already are spending this time. It's really just coming back together to understand how the things, when they fit together perfectly, make that flow a lot easier. We talked about the hose and straightening the hose out. And part of what this is, we would like to talk about the first part. You can see on the diagram is clarifying. We talk about this as an empowering part of the journey. And this is where we align. If you think about often as businesses and entrepreneurs and even people within those businesses, there's a key set of things that they do that's very unique to them that they understand and they usually know how to deliver quite well. And this is why they're being told either the product or the services, they people are loving it. Okay. And this moves into the second part, which is really where some of this transformation really begins to happening. And this is part of what we call the transformation or the overlay. And it's actually getting taking another step back, and instead of thinking about what we do, and by the way, consumers will tell you, or your customers or clients, they don't care about what you do. To be honest with you, they have no questions and no worries, and they want to put no thought about what you want to do. And that's a hard statement. So if you're watching this, I would love your comments, but here's why. It's ideally, we're selfish. Mushka, we care about what we want. We care about where we're going. We care about what our output is. And so do our clients. If they're businesses and you're doing business to business or direct to consumer, they are buying your goods and they're buying your services, and or they want your help to get them farther along in their journey. So this overlay is where we're able to translate that component of what your customers ideally want and who are your ideal clients and customers. There's a series of things that we can talk about, but as a quick idea, who tends to want to spend more money with you? Who, when you provide that service or buys the product, is incredibly happy, and it just requires less effort. So you got this ideal person that once we understand the journey, and then what we do is we overlay that on what you do amazingly well, we start to gain this clarity that removes friction. And the big thing leads us to number 3, which is part of this bridge, and it's where you begin to thrive. And this is where we start to build systems and we start to connect that. We connect your customer and their journey with what it is that you do so amazingly well, with a series of processes that allows it to consistently happen, again, with less effort based on the things that you're already doing. So that's kind of where we're starting. And then we're going to move in here to phase 1 and part of what this looks like and empower and break this down. But Mushka, I was curious to get your thoughts on this, or what other questions you might have for me before we continue on with this.
And I'll talk about my experience. So, in my experience, I have watched clients almost break down when they realize they've been chasing for more when they really needed clarity, or they really needed clear versus more, right? And it's the same thing where, if there's something wrong with the back and you're just trying to effort it out, you'll break the back. You'll break the back rather than actually getting it fixed and aligned, because you don't really need to effort it out. You need to have clarity and alignment in the back, and then you can do whatever you want to do, right? So this is such an important step. I was wondering, how do founders miss this phase, or like, how does Flow 360 unlock this?
That's a really good question. Why and how? Often, and I'll just share my journey, Mushka. My story was, in my last venture, it took me 14 years to double the venture that I was in. And I thought I knew things. Often, I've stated this many times, that entrepreneurship is a lonely road, and it's a lonely world. Meaning that it's like, who do you know that has had the situations that you're currently in that can shed some light on this? Who and where does that insight come from? And I have 2 other phases I'll just throw in here really quick that I don't have on part of the slideshow presentation, but it has to do with becoming a lover of learning and you becoming a student of your future self. And so to me, what I find is that often the entrepreneurs, the founders, the CEOs have been running and doing the things the way that they know, which is great. But at a certain point, this business now needs to find and have some clarity. In essence, what are some of the key pieces that need to come together based on what they do, based on ideally what their customers want, and putting the systems in place that allows it to unlock them to move farther forward. So often it's more or less just not having the understanding, or having somebody from outside that can ask a different set of questions that normally we're not asking ourselves, because we live in our own world. You and I, we know this. We live in this world too much.
Yeah.
You've heard that sometimes, what is it? Knowledge is its own curse, because you know things and people don't know. I have people talk to me and said, what did that mean when I use, a VSL for something when we're talking with a client? Well, it's like, what is that? Well, that's actually a way of putting a video together that you can communicate with your customers that has to do with the processes you do. Video sales letter. And so I forget, but business entrepreneurs often are some of their own worst enemies, because you're so involved in the processes that they can't step back out. And so often, some of the only ways that people are going to be able to find this is by looking at outside resources, outside learning, outside insights, in order to give them a series of questions to look through in order to help them find out about these phases.
Uh, I'm hooked. I want to know more. Let's let's just
Well,
deep do you have a deep delve into this and this and
okay,
you know.
we're going to break these out. We'll try to go through this a little bit quicker because we were going to try to keep this short, and I know we're already extending it, but let's just kind of talk about phase one. This is the empowering phase. If you look at this, it's pretty simple. This is where we begin to uncover and find out really what you do best. It's what the company does best. It's what the services are that you do best. It's what really defines, and what I like to say in the world, people would know this term is like a unique value proposition. And we refer to this as kind of like this 360 offer. It's this offer that's so unique to you and the statements of what you do that somebody can't go and price shop it. Somebody can't get out there and try to understand, can I find this at a better rate? And the goal is that you don't want to be, you want to be at the point where you can charge premium services for premium expectations and outputs with your clients. So this is where we really can find out what you do best. Part of that is we look at filtering, and this is removing the distractions or the things that we feel like are moving us forward, but they're actually just taking the time that we shouldn't probably be focusing on those things. You might consider some of them could be broken, even though we don't know they're broken. And the last is kind of moves us into part of the focus. And this is where we're able to align or realign those efforts based on, again, what we ourselves do very, very well. And I'll tell you, and maybe Mushka, you can share this with me as well. I've sat across from many, many business owners, and they tend to be able to say, well, this is what I do. This is why I love this. This is why I've created this. This is what people are telling me. But that's about as far as we go because we're not able to move this to the next one. So we talk about kind of like the misaligned spline. If this is off, just slightly off, even a minor slight difference will really affect everything. And again, if we're still moving, you're functioning, but everything feels not quite right. You can say it feels a little bit wrong. And I had several business owners come to us, and you'll know the same question is, I just feel like there's something that we are missing.
Yeah.
One of them said, I know that what I have is amazing. And sometimes people are transitioning careers or businesses. A lot of these people have been business owners in previous businesses and moved into a new category, or they've been kind of in this place where they've now had some money that they've wanted to invest, or they've developed a product or a service. And now they're becoming professionals in this field that requires a different set of ways of looking at things. So what ends up happening is it's draining their energy. So, you end up powering through depleting, again, how you feel and your excitement about why you began this or why you bought the business or where you were 2 or 3 years ago. And this doesn't mean these businesses often, Mushka, they're still moving. They're still moving. It's just a little bit arduous. And
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people tell me that their businesses are up and down and they've invested money and they've got some of it back, but they've expected, and like all of us do, we dream about this big output, right? This dream goal.
That's the problem, right? That's the blind spot because it's not like they're not making money, or it's not like they're not able to pay the bills. They're doing all that, but they're not having the next best moment or the big jump or the plunge where they are financially independent, because that's where they're live. They're in this comfort zone of working a lot and producing some amount of money, and that's why they don't realize that there must be something that they might be doing wrong. And if they could align, why are you laughing?
I just thinking about your experience, I'm going to share because I was like, just so true. By the way, I'm going to share. I just because you've seen this and you'd be like, holy cow! So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm just
please,
thinking of Mushka and how this is just so true with so many businesses. So sorry.
please share your experience.
Well, it just comes back. Again, you talked about like mining gold. There's just money in our business, and I'll bring up, and we'll just talk about that as part of this piece right here. And let me kind of make sure what I've got going next. And
Right?
really quick,
Are you matching with your slides? Because that's what I'm seeing.
yeah, we're good. I'm just checking to make sure. But to me, let's just talk about this because
No,
it's exactly what you're talking about right now.
matching. I meant your shirt color and
Oh, there you go. You like that? Nice, nice. But part of it, people have probably tried several different things, or they're afraid to try some of this. As an example, they're like, "Hey, we're trying to sign up these corporate clients and customers, and we've got this deck together." But when they do so, they feel like it doesn't hit all the time, and only certain customers tend to understand. I go back to paid ads. Some people are like, I don't quite know because if I do this, I've not found great results, or they've had and they brought in different consultants and they've tried different programs, but it just feels like they've tried a few of these things and they're working and they're actively trying to solve this. But it just, again, things start coming together the right way. And part of this is, in that particular phase, you can't scale it before, right? With multiple functions, and you're multiplying, I guess what it's saying is fractions of part of what you should be doing. And once we put it together and we end up fixing the source, if you think the basis of what this is, things naturally flow. And to me, that's one of the things. And yours was, I just wanted to talk about as part of this, the hidden value piece. Mushka, let's just talk about emails. This is a simple one. And we're not telling you, we're not email specialists. We understand the power of email. And when we talked about our 3 phases, if you remember, again, part of this is the empower, which is clarity and transform and transformation is what you do and with your clients do. And then we build a system underneath that with the bridge is we do have key things like that. And Mushka, I know with you, with a couple of our clients, when we help them understand their message, they understand their client, and they start to build communication around that. We've seen a couple companies, $30, $50, $80,000 a month based on their current customer client base, and then being able to acquire customers and clients up significantly. Sorry, go ahead.
There was this one client where they were doing an event, and we just wrapped our email sequence around that, and they made 47K that week just from the emails.
Okay. And I love that because coming back, that is the hidden value that exists in your business if you begin to align those, right? So your unique strengths start to exist, but often they remain unseen. And part of that is bringing clarity around it. So this is helping reveal what you do better than anyone else. And when we couple that with the understanding of ideally what your clients want, this all translates into the advantages that only you can provide with your customers, which is a huge, 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 huge game changer. And again, this is one of the biggest reasons most businesses stay stuck is they think that they're going to rework themselves out of it. And, this term down here is like, clever copywriting, or clever copy covering up confusion. What a stranger understands, whether you know what you're doing or not. And often we have to rephrase things 2 or 3 times. And that's because we really don't know.
Yeah.
So, and that's the question is if you could ask a clear question like you did on some of these emails, would a stranger truly, really understand exactly what it is? I'm going to say you do, and how that's tied into how you're presenting that as an offer. And ideally it means is what is that going to do for them and how is it taking them to where they want to be? And often most businesses have a very hard time being very clear on this particular place. And so what you end up with is a lack of clarity. All right, Mushka, let's move down. This is part of the next one is what we do in Empower. Yeah. Okay, and this is where we build what we're calling part of the clarity lens. This is where we're able to look at things a little bit differently. See your business with perfect focus. And this is kind of as we're moving through the Empower, we're identifying the leverage points that we have. And so we're able to find the small changes that create bigger results for people. To your point, wrapping part of an experience or an event with a series of emails. And we call this Engage 360 before, during, and after can make a huge difference. Defining part of the roles and aligning what your natural strengths are, ideally leading to what we're considering creating the core messaging that truly resonates with your ideal customers and clients in a way that was not happening before. So therefore, things were very, very restricted. Right. Okay. You have any other experience you want to share before I move into phase 2, transform?
No, I was just wondering that if there is just one line that should give about the first phase, what would that be? Like if you have to just, compress it into one line, what would you say?
Compress it into one line.
And I'm a stranger. I'm not much. I'm a stranger. You met off the street or something.
Clarity. What I would probably say on this, and it would be more of some advice, is often some of the best ways to become most clear about what you do that defines your success is by getting and understanding that from somebody else's perspective.
Do you want me to give an analogy for that?
Yes, that would be great. And I say this because just by the way, everybody around me is like, let me help interpret what he just said. And so your analogy, then we'll kind of wrap that up and then we'll move into phase 2.
Yeah. So basically it's like this, that you are this person who have your own business and everything is going all right and not as amazing as you'd like it to go. And then Nathan comes along and Nathan takes off your glasses and Nathan wipes it off, all the smudges and all the dirt. And then because you could see that there is that mountain that you want to go on the top of, but it's a bit blurry, but you're still going there. But then when Nathan just wipes everything off of the glasses and then give it back to you, and then you wear it, and you're like, oh, now this makes sense. Now I know how I moved to, that top part of the mountain.
It's like, oh, the path is so clear now. And by the way, we hear that over and over. I know when we interview and work with our clients and we ask them a few things, I think that's probably, and maybe you can share this because I'm not usually involved in those. It has to do with that clarity, doesn't it?
Yeah,
The
it does.
focus and the direction.
Like, oh, that makes so much sense. Now I know why this wasn't working. This makes so much sense.
And they
This
say it over and over, like, yeah, this just feels like it's so right. Like it just fits with exactly.
and they also, and this is I don't know if it's a nice thing to say or not. They also say that, why didn't we think about it? Like, this was so easy and this was so obvious. How could we not think about it? How could we miss this?
Oh, just so true, right? Most all things in our lives are just that way. And again, that's why I said if you could kind of see this from another perspective. And to your point, I loved clearing off the glasses. And so we're like, oh, can you see this now? Like, oh, that's crystal clear. You were kind of working, but it felt foggy and a little bit unclear with where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's perfect. I love that.
Let's talk about transform.
All right, so this moves us into our next one, and this is the transformation phase. And so this is where we start to look at what we're calling, we can say it's market translation. So this is where you can make your truth or what it is that you do so well visible to others. And this is where we begin to truly understand the second part here, which is what we'd call targeted positioning. So this is how we stand out in the right way. Now, this is critical because a lot of people would say, this is why I stand out. And it doesn't matter why you stand out. It's that you need to stand out in the right way, which leads us to the third piece here, which is that magnetic attraction. It's that you stand out in such a way that it draws in your ideal clients naturally. And I think a lot of people in this world, they're like, I don't really like to sell. I don't have to. Selling is not is a hard thing, and they just feel uncomfortable with it. And even if you're a great salesperson, like I've heard, from cold calling and having to reach out, like you got to get yourself prepped from this. This simple transformation phase is one of the things that actually completely flips this on its head, Mushka, and it transforms it from you feeling like you're out there trying to find and fight for business, that because the message becomes so clear and it directly relates with what they want to hear. So again, standing out in the right way on what your clients ideally want to hear and how it helps them to the transformation, they show up and they line up at your door. I'll just use a quick example of this, and we might get back into this a little bit later, but I know we've got to kind of hustle because we're not too many slides into this and I'm spending too much time. But one of our groups
This is good. We're talking about things that we love. That's fine.
Yeah, there you go. One of the things with one of the businesses is they sell to mid to high end clients, and they do software as a service, and they do implementations on a few things. And as they were doing so, as we got crystal clear on part of their roadmap on what they do for clients and customers and what it means internal to their business and what it means externally, they've had a couple clients just very clearly state that once we finished our first conversation and they were looking at competitors, they told the competitors no thank you because they understood with clarity what this brand, so in essence, what my client was going to be providing for their ideal customer. And it was so directly matched that they just canceled everybody else and said, let's run with this. And so that is the goal, is being able to walk through these things and understand and translate what you've got, positioning that in a way that is most ideal to the outcome of your client, your customers, and making sure that they're drawn to this. And he kind of was really surprised. He looked back at me. He says, I was just having a conversation. He didn't sell. He was like, I knew where you wanted to go. I knew what that was. I was sharing part of just what we did that helped them accomplish that. And they were nodding their head going like, this is exactly what we've been looking for. And he actually was on a plane flight when he got there. That was the question, is like, who else is coming? And he said, once we had our conversation, we canceled everybody else. Thanks for being here, because we're excited about moving along. So let's go ahead and move along to this and talk about part of this concept that I have with an overlay. But maybe, Mushka, do you have any questions as I kind of get into this part with positioning, the messaging, and a couple other things?
I do not have any question. It's just, again, I have an example. I don't have a question, but I do have an example.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's hear it.
It's like Nathan, how you know that I love biryani, right? So
I do know. I can't wait to the day I have biryani as well, by the way.
Oh my God, Nathan, I do not understand how you have lived half of your life without having biryani. That's a sad situation. Anyhow, so I love biryani, right? And biryani is a rice dish for anyone who maybe not know what biryani is. It's a rice dish. It has rice, meat, and potatoes in it, and it's spicy. So let's say there's
I love spicy.
I love spicy. No, I don't. I love American spicy. I don't like Indian Pakistani spicy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So let's say there's a hawker that sells biryani, and it's somewhere in the middle of the town, and I do not know about that hawker, and that hawker does not know about me. But then there is some other town where everybody is a mushka and everybody loves biryani. If the hawker was in that particular town, he would be selling biryani right off the shelf all the time. So knowing where your audience is and knowing how to connect to your audience, that actually makes all the difference. And I'm pretty sure everyone on the social media have seen this, big this big violin player, and he was playing on the subway and nobody paid attention. And then when he was playing on the, like, he had tickets for like 250 pounds or something. I don't know the exact digits, but then everybody was there to see him. And so the right place is very important with respect to whatever talent or whatever product or services that you're selling.
I love it. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I love the example. And thanks for continuing to bring all these insights into it. I love what Mushka does as our director of strategic integration. A lot of people need interpretation. So I'm working on being a little bit more clear. And I just love your example. So thanks a lot. Well, let's go ahead and continue with this. I like to refer to this, and I've had this aha here recently when I was trying to talk with one of the clients about what this means. And so I'm going to refer to this kind of as your overlay. And those of us that are old school, and not everybody will know this. If you're younger and newer entrepreneurs, you probably didn't go to school where your teacher slapped down this clear sheet of paper that can be overlaid with a projector so that you can kind of align things, okay? And that's where we're at. So if you think about a transparency or a clear sheet of paper that has part of a map on it, it's really hard to see what that is unless you can put that on top of another surface with a contrasting color on the bottom. And that's what we're talking about in this phase, okay? And what this is this is the overlay. This is the external power of connecting ideally what your customer wants and overlaying that on top of the services you provide. So this is a positioning. So how you stand out in the market. This is part of the messaging. This is how you communicate part of what the value is to this client to help them with their journey. This is part of the offer, and this is how you are structuring the way things come together and are communicated, again, in the sales process with your clients. And when those two things begin to overline and overlay each other, man, it really makes it easy to align things like we've talked about the chiropractor. If he knows the spine's off, he knows where he can help fix that. Or if we also need to clear our glasses and so that we can see the trails better and more clear, those things all bring alignment in and make it a critical part that helps things move forward faster. All right, let's move. Go ahead.
No, I was saying let's move ahead. That's exactly what I was about to say.
Okay, great. So most strategy with most businesses stops working here. So this is kind of where they get a little tangled, culture, phrases that don't necessarily drive results because we're trying to be too fancy. This is where we often don't do a great job potentially as a visionary of the business with part of the translations or clarify, and things remain stuck inside. We just had this example of you wanting to share, let me tell you what Nathan means, because often we have a hard time getting that out and communicating that, sometimes with the customer, sometimes with our teams as well. And what ends up happening is we end up with not a great process for implementation. So ideas without execution, no change can happen. And again, I would like to say is if we're getting tangled and things are mistranslated, even if we're implementing them, then they're actually broken, or what we're doing is just not that effective. And this kind of takes us down to what we do with part of in the transformation phase. And so part of this is, again, the reposition. And so this is, how do we help stand out in a crowded market? How and why are we so unique that nobody else has the same type of solution? And trust me, this is absolutely possible in every single business, and even with products themselves. And to me, you can think about, let's take, and you have a better experience on this, but handbags. Handbags vary in price. Now, some of it is cost and design and talent. However, a lot of it is positioning, right? And you and I, we've talked about that a couple of different times. This is where we're able to create what we call like this more of this magnetic position in offering. This is where you're able to attract what we would consider your most ideal customer. Not every customer. And by the way, there's good, better, and best customers, but it's really, we want more of our best, our ideal customers, right? And this is where we can narrow down part of the market and focus on what we would consider as the perfect fit. The more perfectly aligned you are for your ideal client in getting them the results that they want, then the more likely you are to connect and the more willing they are to pay for that. This world isn't always about cost as meaning cheap or low. There is a great combination between value and what they're expecting results. And then there's times and a couple other things that come into that mix. And last, the key thing is what I call is kind of where we start to engineer the bridge, or this is the demand, where we start to connect the customer's needs with you and the services. And so what starts to happen is like, oh, they might not even known that they knew what a lot of times people have, and there's, different levels of awareness. Let's just say that people understand that there's a need that they have. They're not quite sure how or well or who or what or where they're going to be getting that from. When you start to share the results and how you help clients get these, what ideally these dream outcomes are, and they understand those, and you connect in your words and your language, and you connect in concept of where you're going, it makes sense and it connects with them, and they start lining up at your door. And this is the whole thing when I start talking about is changing the goal from you feeling like you're out there huffing and puffing and trying to and using your energies to go find things. And it's a way of flipping the script on this and bringing it back, where what ends up happening is clients begin to come to you. They begin to want to know more about you. Clients refer way more people to you because these things just work so well and they're so aligned that it creates stacks of potential customers. I'll use this other thing really quick, Mushka, is a lot of people are, and I'm not saying we don't go get leads. I'm not saying you don't market. No, that's all critical. But again, what's really cool is once we understand this and we have a normal customer client that we're going to do a demo with, or we're getting on the phone with, or we're going to present a product to, because your message is so clear and they were knowing what they were coming in the door for, you actually don't sell them. You actually just have a conversation to transition that relationship from a potential buyer to a purchased transition.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens here. And so what ends up happening is you get stacks of people that come and want to buy.
That is so true. I've seen that firsthand.
Yeah, I like to say, going back to this and really quick, we would say that in this particular phase, when companies understand this, this actually can up to 4 to 5x their close rates.
Yeah.
And so in essence, you're already getting your leads. And this is why we're talking about mining things, Mushka, even in the way we communicated in emails, right? Hey, let's just wrap something with this additional communication. And people are gonna be like, oh, it's a lot more clear now. And because it's more clear, they're like, I want to spend money with you. That happens at all levels. And I'm talking from the tens of dollars to the hundreds of thousands of dollars is why. And that's kind of why we started this. Is there another 25K to 100K in your business? And it can be another $1 million in your business monthly. And again, my quick story back with us is once I started to understand these key things, remember it took me 14 years to double the business. I didn't tell you the rest of that story. Is once I began to understand these and put them into place, within 3 years, we tripled the business because of this understanding that really helped us align what we were doing internally, connect with our customers in that communication, move through things much, much faster. And then we're going to move to phase 3, unless you have a couple other thoughts you wanted to share on phase 2 there.
I don't. Let's move to phase 3.
Okay. Phase 3, this is one of the last phases. And so again, we move from clarity or empower to transformation, or where we're beginning to bridge. And this is where we're really looking at thriving, because we've understood us and our clients and our customers and our processes. We're looking at taking what we have. To your point, we've cleared off our glasses and our lenses. And so now we can see a lot more clear. We move into this, and this is where we start to, in addition to the clarity, this is where we know our unique value. Again, the visibility, we're able to make sure that we're seen. We're able to put, ideally here, this is where we put systems into place. So this thrive phase is where we start to look at the systems and growth begin to happen. So these are kind of the other two things that happen once we kind of move through those first two. And this is where we begin to understand, and we're structuring things that create freedom. And this is freedom in everything. This is freedom for owners and founders. If you're that person, often, you and I go in and out of this, where we end up spending too much time on most days, too late into the day, trying to solve these problems. And we understand that once we can build consistency through some of these systems underneath it that aligns these, it helps us so that we don't collapse under pressure, right? So success becomes one of your bigger problems instead of the problem that you've been searching for. And so this helps us structure that correctly. And so this is what we do in part of the Thrive. This is where we look at part of what we call part of the strategic flow stack. And so this is where we start to look at key systems that can multiply themselves, from the emails, the communications, and the socials, the marketing, the advertising, and the way the brand's positioned. And it doesn't require more time and effort. In fact, we're big believers in AI. So a lot of the stuff, when we start doing this, Mushka, we implement within these businesses AI as almost a first go-to strategy with everybody. This is where we begin to build the engines that allow for consistent acquisition. And this is where we also create operational freedom. And what I mean by this is not somebody at the top is always the person who's having to make the questions answer the questions and try to continue to push everybody, it gets moved down to different people within the organization. Depending on how small, that might be you. If you've got one or two team members, often this is allowing them to become a lot more um, skilled and developed because they now have these structures that they can hold on to that create consistent output within the business.
Yeah.
All right. Want me to continue to go here? Are we good? Or are you having something else? Let me know. Just go ahead and raise your hand and stop me there if you're wanting me to stop.
No, I don't. I just want to complete this. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I want to, move further.
Good deal. So business, this is the one. This is where they don't break. So we can scale with clarity. We are able to now not be confused as far as what we're doing because we're trying to make things too complex. In essence, we simplify them. This is where we begin to leverage and we gain leverage as an entrepreneur, founder, CEO, key person. So it's not just about more hours worked. And this is where we end up with the systems that kind of overtake some of what we call those manual interventions that are often needed. And this is where we start getting the real results. This is where we start finding the revenue growth. Our businesses, moving as a founder from a, $2.4 million business to 3.5 in a matter of 6 months. You can do this and, people are not just adding 10% a year. They're not adding 15 at a time like this. When we talk about the economy and other things, these key strategies come together to allow you to kind of move around those barriers and those obstacles. A couple of our clients, some of our mid-sized businesses have had a great opportunity. Again, everything varies, and this is not what I'm saying is guaranteed, but every person in every business just has different levels of money that's been trapped in their business that once we put these forward, help them move forward faster. My last business venture, again, it was a 3-year one, but it was moving from 10 to $30 million. And so you can talk about some very, very significant shifts and moves in businesses. And again, that sounds great and all, and business people have done this to $1 million. Our key thing is, with those medium-sized businesses that are really trying to push themselves, past that $1 million to 5 to 10 million, et cetera, so that they can accelerate. It also is the freedom. So it just requires less time and effort, less hours in the day. Fridays off, you can consider that. Quality of life goes up, a little bit more flow ends up happening, less stress ends up happening. And that's kind of where we bring these three things back together is kind of the recap on what we call the Flow 360 is really solving a couple of the key things for businesses. And this is where, if we were to look at to begin with, some of the key problems are usually stemming around where somebody has a product, they've got services, they're not quite sure why it's flying off the shelf. There's this hidden money and revenue in their business, but they have not been able to unlock it. Part of that is because they wanted clarity that helped them understand what they do very, very well. The second thing is moving this really to the transition of their customers and helping them be able to, if we transform part of their processes, and what it does is it creates simplicity in the messaging between what their ideal clients want. And that leads us to the third through, again, if we think about this, empower, transform, and thrive, or clarify. And I talk about this overlay, and the last one is the bridge. As we bring that together, these things come together and help us really create a tremendous system. Clarity, the overlay, and the bridge to bring these together. What do you do? How do you do this with others that makes it easy and well? And then how do you scale that out as a system? So it's not just another optimized play. So a lot of people think like, hey, let's just optimize the system. I would like to say that systems themselves can get you so far, but often it's the way we have people apply and start to ask these filters for clarity that unlocks those next key items. So it's not new tactics. It's not what we're trying to do, something new. It's really taking what we already have and what's already inside part of the business. It's aligning that again. So it's realigning it. So it's built around the things that exist. It's not trying to rechange a company, not rechanging a product because you're already finding success. It's just not at the level you want. And it's a couple core correctional pieces. So it's fixing some fundamental issues that are not just symptomatic. And that really helps change part of the flow. So we would ask the question, Mushka, who is, Flow 364? It really is for those business owners. And we find people a little bit below this and we find people above this as well. But they're the founders. We like to call them the entrepreneurs, CEOs. And I would call them also as key individuals within the business. A lot of our businesses introduce us and we are introduced into their business from people that are working within positions that said, hey, I know that if we could get this clarity in our company, boy, it would completely unlock what we have. And so we have a lot of people introducing us who are key roles. You can talk about different levels of marketing, different levels of sales, different levels of finance that are hearing this message as well and saying, hey, let's just find out if this truly is something that makes sense for us as a company. And to me, I'd like to say visionaries. Often we've met with many people that just know that there's this potential in the business, but for some reason they can't unlock it. So they're wanting to build something meaningful, something that lasts. And again, that last one is they just know that there's just more to be had. So there's a little bit of this offness, what we call it. When we started, something seems off, right? Well, it's because we know that there's this opportunity. So what happens next? The key thing too is I just encourage anybody who wants to reach out. Make sure to follow us, like and subscribe, comment, give us your thoughts and ideas. Mushka and I will continue to bring other context to the table that we'll continue to have as other subsets of this. And we help people install this Flow 360 into their businesses. There are short wins on this. We could say like 30 to 90 days. We find a lot of businesses want to continue because really it's once we understand some foundational pieces, we build on that to continue. And my business called 360 is because really it's reiterative, meaning we're going to look at this over and over and continue to fine tune this time and time again. So we implement, we help integrate that in. And I would love to say any questions you have, bring them our way. And that really gets you to the spot where you end up with clarity again, or empowerment, the overlay and part of the transformation. And then you can thrive as you begin to bridge that. And we'd love for you to reach out and book a call with us. Look at us on our website, follow us, look at a couple of our other lead gens that we have, and we want to connect with more of you in order to help you find more success. So Mushka, there we go. It's kind of a long wrap around, something that was meant to be quite a bit shorter, but there we go.
Is what it is.
All right. Any last questions or things you want to finish off with the crowd that's been watching us today?
I think even if you're confused and you do not know that, is there anything that's, invisible in your business? I think a good idea would be to just book a call or reach out to us on any medium and just have a discussion, like, just a free call discussion where you can discuss ideas with us. We love growth. We love business. We love helping out people. So let's just connect.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'd love to talk with you about where you're at in order to help you move forward and push your businesses to the place that you dream of them being and know that's possible. So thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye.